Hello and welcome to another live chat. I'm hoping everyone's okay, and I'm just waiting for some people to come in. So hello there to those that's just joining. So these videos, as you know, go on to YouTube, and obviously those that's watching this on YouTube can follow me on TikTok. So I'm the guy that waffles on about aliens, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff. So if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. Now, obviously, I normally put up a picture that describes what I do. So I don't know if many people will actually join because they probably have no idea what I do. But so if you've got any questions about anything paranormal, UFOs, Bigfoots, Egypt, all that kind of good stuff, just feel free to ask, and if not, I will just waffle on for those that end up watching this on YouTube. So I'm just trying to think what to talk about first while I wait for your questions. So I will talk about the Anunnaki, yes, again, only because I am doing the videos, and of course when I get round to doing other videos, I'll be talking about them. So let's talk about the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki, as we all know, okay, someone's asked a question. Cash Only's asked, when will the Anunnaki come back, or will the Anunnaki be coming back? I absolutely doubt it. See, basically, when they left Earth, they left because they didn't want to stay here anymore, and they never built any permanent structures here. Yes, you could argue the pyramids, etc., but these were every building they built, or every infrastructure they built, was for a purpose, not for recreational or fun things, or things that they could do 100,000 years time. They literally built what they needed, and then they bugged out when they got what they needed, which was the gold. So there's no reason for them to come back whatsoever. Now, they have been seen with military people, whistleblowers have said. So there are, we have made contact with them. Now, whether or not they are in charge of our elites remains to be seen. Now, it could be the reptilians that are in charge of our elites that are telling us what to do. So I don't think the Anunnaki will ever be back. Not in the way that we think they'll be back. They're not going to come down here and attack us or anything like that. They could have done that when the flood happened. And so if you actually sort of follow the story of how the flood happened, so I've been researching that a lot recently, obviously, as I'm coming up to the flood in my videos. So that, to me, I think the flood was a natural phenomenon that they was aware of, and they obviously couldn't stop. Now, I've done some videos on showing what kind of technology, I haven't released them yet, but what kind of technology they had, and they didn't have the technology. They're not like little greys that could zip around and do this and go into volcanoes like the little greys do. They didn't have that sort of technology. So when they knew the flood was coming, that was it. They was more than happy to wipe out the humans. However, Enki obviously didn't want humans to die, put up a bit of a fight with his dad and his brother. Unfortunately, he lost, and then they got in ships and went into orbit and watched the flood happen. Now, accounts say that they were crying and they realised what a bad mistake they'd done as they watched people die. So they eventually, when the flood was over, they eventually decided, we like these little humans, let's go back and help them. And that's when the agriculture was taught to us, when basically things that wasn't allowed to be taught to us prior to that ended up being taught to us. So there's a couple of questions. Okay, someone's asked what uni I went to. The University of Life. So that's all I can say. To be honest with you, I wouldn't trust the university, because a lot of them are funded by the Rockefellers, and the Rockefellers' agenda is not to show people our true history. So unfortunately, if you went to a university and was learning this kind of stuff, you would probably either be kicked out, or you would be told to toe the line. So that's why I say University of Life, because that's the one where you get the real information, not from someone telling you what they believed. Well, not even what they believed, what they've been told to tell you. Same as schools, they tell you what they are told to tell you. So just going back to the questions there. Hi, Amanda. Sheets wrote, I bring you love. Thank you. And I'm sure that goes to all the people that's joined us at the moment. So you think there are aliens between us? Cash has wrote, I'm not sure what you mean between us. Do you mean Adam and Eve type of between us? You know, is there an alien that changed us to create Adam and Eve, or do you mean there's aliens on the planet Earth? So I'm not quite sure which one that was. Why did they not reach out to us? Hunters wrote, that's to do with the Anunnaki, because the Anunnaki did what they wanted to do. They got what they done what they did, they got the gold, and yes, they did help us after the flood. You know, they taught us things. They apparently even brought over some livestock and seeds. That's where we got some of our certain types of seeds from, barley and stuff, where they actually made some sort of cereal type things over in the Middle East and stuff. So some of that plants, apparently, if you believe everything, some of those came from their own home planet, which is quite interesting. But once they've done what they've done, and you know, they set us back on the right path, you know, and they left the writings with us, you know, such as the Ten Commandments, to help us not do stupid things. Which the Ten Commandments, let's be honest, are quite good, quite logical. But of course, unfortunately, greedy people then changed these books that they wrote, or stone tablets, into what they wanted to write, and then they ended up changing it from them to him to make it sound like there's just one God, and so on. So yeah, there's no reason for them to come back. They you know, they weren't that interested in us in the first place, and they got what they needed. Okay, Cassius wrote about the flood. I knew that Enki did the flood. Enlil did the flood, and Enki felt bad for us, and he told now to build the ark. So yeah, from my research so far, I'm still doing absolutely humongous research on the floods, but it's coming up that it was a natural phenomenon that they were aware of, but they couldn't stop. So then that's when I know it sounded, you know, in the Bible and everything, it says, I will do, you know, wipe you all out and get rid of the Nephilim and everything else. But I think it was a natural thing, and Enki wanted to try and help, and that's why Enki ended up telling his offspring, through Adam and Eve offspring, to build some sort of ark. So it wasn't just so after that, if you read the text after the flood, it wasn't just Adam and Eve, you know, descendants that survived. It was also, when you watch my new video number 430, what comes out, it will explain how I think there's two Adam and Eves, one 300,000 years ago and one that was the Adam and Eve that we know of. So the ones 300,000 years ago had children, and they populated the planet for 200 odd thousand years before the next Adam and Eve that we all kind of know, even though the Bible gets a bit of it mixed up between the rib. The rib came from the Adam and Eve from 300,000 years ago. But just wait for the video to come out. It's the next one. It'll be on tonight. So I'll just move on to the next question. Do you think the Queen is part reptile? No, I remember hearing this years and years ago, because obviously the old blue blood and everything else. I don't, and the reason why is when you sit and watch her. I mean, I've seen her fairly close up in some events where she's opened things and stuff like that. You know, if she was a reptile, what a boring life that would be. And she actually has no power, literally no power whatsoever. To do anything. So if you was an alien species and you wanted to take control of Earth, the last person you would probably choose is the Queen, because she has no power and she does nothing all day long, you know, other than going around supermarkets or wherever opening up things. So no, I can't imagine her being part reptile. Even if it was a shapeshifter, certainly not. But even if her royalty line was that of part reptilians. I just can't see it. I know people, show pictures of her eyes and stuff like that, but the logic to me isn't there for them to be reptilian. And as I mentioned before in other videos, if a reptile wanted to coerce someone into doing something, they would threaten them. They wouldn't sit there and sort of shapeshift into that person. They would just say, listen, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, we'll get you. Cash has wrote the Ark. So I think there's a couple of arcs, and I think they are some sort of powered sources. I've mentioned before that the Ark of the Covenant in cubits actually matches the what people call the sarcophagus or tomb in the Great Pyramid, but it's not actually a tomb in the Great Pyramid. It was never designed as a tomb, but so I don't know if so it's a granite. In fact, there was no lid. In fact, that's people say that it was a tomb, and that tomb robbers stole the lid. But obviously, there was never a lid, because that's where I believe the Ark would have fitted perfectly into it to become part of the power source for the Great Pyramid. But I do think there was more than one Ark, and that's why I think some sort of power source, which is why only certain priests were allowed to carry it, and even those ended up with some sort of radiation style. Obviously, they didn't write the word radiation, but they ended up with all sorts of illnesses that now we kind of link to radiation problems. So I think the arcs were some sort of power devices that were being carried around. I'm just scrolling on. Sheets has wrote, the Queen is a wrinkly reptile. And someone's laughed underneath that. Okay, John has wrote, when will we meet the aliens? You want the real answer? It's a horrible answer. I think we will meet the aliens when the depopulation program has happened, and we're looking in the next couple of 100 years before aliens are flying around, that we actually, once all the depopulation problem's gone and they've moved on, our society's moved on, then I think the people that's left were meant to be left, and left alive, shall we say. And then so that's when I think the aliens will show themselves. However, we have had contact with people's dreams, visions at night. These have come from, for example, the Palladians, who are trying to wake us up in our dreams, to make us understand what's going on. And then you've got the Zetas that actually physically take us and try and educate us. But so far we're not waking up. Lummies wrote, do you still work at ASDA? I don't think I've ever worked at ASDA. I'm guessing that's probably because someone asked what my university is. They're trying to, I guess, belittle my knowledge or skills or brains. I have done a lot for someone that for someone that had problems at school. I've done a lot, done very, very well for myself. But no, I don't work for ASDA, and it's all self-taught, everything that I've ever done. Okay, the Sean's wrote, how much of what you say can be backed up with evidence? So regarding the Anunnaki, if you go back to the proper translations of it, and then use a bit more common sense. So, for example, where the translations say heaven, because obviously those that translated it back in the day didn't know the word for space. So you could argue, okay, well, that's not proof, but if you put the logic with that, so for example, I go back to the law thing, like with aliens, I could fill a courtroom with eyewitnesses saying that there's aliens, and you'll say, well, that's fake, they're not real, blah blah blah. But in a courtroom of law, that amount of people that testify would be considered evidence. So I'm just sort of saying there's different ways of looking at evidence, and obviously you've got the alien implant. So there's things that back up the things that I'm saying. So, but I mean, as I say, I might be wrong on some of these things. It's just, my 30 years of research has led me to this conclusions. And obviously, if you don't agree or have a different view, that's not a problem at all. But that's what I do, and I throw it out there. Sheets has asked, where's the University of Life? It's 30 years of research, talking to clairvoyants, mediums, spiritualists, NDEs, near-death experiencers, other researchers, trying to go back as far as I can with my own understanding of the knowledge. But again, if you don't believe me, that's no problem. And Lumley's wrote that the University of Life is on Mars. Obviously, they're not fans of what I'm saying. Feel free to move on. The Sean, the one that seems to it says, I enjoy all of this kind of thing, but the imagination is limitless. Well, just go and research it. That's all I'm saying. It's out there to be researched. Again, as I say to people, and I knock them down a lot. I make them feel stupid, so I don't mean to make you feel stupid. But 200 years ago, if I said I can get 500 people in a tin can and go to another country across the ocean, you would have said I'm stupid. You would. No way. 200 years ago, never going to happen. 500 people in a tin can, never going to happen. So you see what I'm saying? So when you say the imagination is limitless, I kind of just drop the mic on you there and sort of prove to you that, in 100 years, whatever I'm saying now may be out there. And and then Lumley's just wrote again, do you still work as the... Psycho Mum has wrote, I love this. This is our true story. Our true history, sorry. Thank you. HXX has wrote, when is Enki coming back? He's not. To be honest, we don't know, or not. Well, when I say we, none of the researchers know their true lifespan of the Anunnaki. And of course, we don't know how long Enki was living, for example, prior to even coming to Earth. So we know they lived up till... or we can go up to sort of Roman, Greek times, because obviously Enki was classed as Poseidon and Neptune, so we can get a date, the last dates from that point. And when he left Earth, there's no sort of real date. No one sat there and wrote it down. It's just they all left, and that was the end of it. And Enoch, who was the scribe, would have long been dead. The one that wrote the Book of Enoch would have long been dead. So I don't think there was anyone left around to write down what happened at the end. And that's where I think the people that joined and came along and made Bibles from those original writings added their own bits in there, and rightly or wrongly, and that's how I think the Bibles ended up being what they were. Love 3 now sent a rose. Oh, thank you very much. I will share that with all the kind folk on here. Seems like Enlil, the god. Seems like Enlil is the god, the Old Testament. Well, yes, he was. You've got obviously Enlil's father, who was the god of gods, and then you got Enlil's father's father, which was Kronos, etc. But on Earth, if you watch the videos where I talked about the Tablet of Destinies, he was written down on that Tablet of Destinies as the supreme god on Earth. But Enki was the supreme god of water, but nothing happened with the water, so so he kind of got the bum deal out of it. But he was the scientist, so he rightly so went over to help do the mining and stuff. So yes, so Enlil was classed as our sort of main god. Psycho Mums wrote, when are they coming back? They're not. Well, not in a way that we think they're coming back. They're already dealing with our secret military, apparently. But they're not going to come back and talk to us or anything like that. There's no point in them doing that, unless they've got an issue with their planet and they decide to come here. But I don't know how much more advanced they are. I've calculated they're about 150 years more advanced than us in certain aspects, but probably 500 years behind us in other aspects. The streams of consciousness wrote, the most of the Ten Commandments are nonsense. I think they're fairly logical. I think they're a good basis. Thou shalt not steal and all that kind of stuff. I mean, do you mean they're nonsense as if they're not real, or do you mean they're nonsense as if you should have had things like kill someone, murder people, rape people, whatever you want to say? I think they're a good basis. Not too bad. So the Sean has wrote, so these people travelled light years in time. No, they didn't travel light years in time. If you know much about them, they're in our same solar system as us. And when their planet gets near to us, we can actually see it. So it's not light years. But anyway, okay. But they wrote in stone. Yeah. Okay, I've got diaries from, when I was a kid, and the pen and paper's all rubbed off, mate. Do you see where I'm going with this? I'm sorry, I'm going to drop the mic again. But what's logical is write in stone for it to stay there, or write on papyrus, pieces of paper, which they did end up using, and granted, but that was down the line, and that wasn't the Anunnaki, that was Egyptians and the Babylonians and things like that. But the actual gods made sure things were wrote in tablets, clay tablets, because they weren't daft like us. If they want something, see, the problem is we package stuff and we sell it and we think it's great, and it doesn't last. So, for example, I'll go back to the Roswell stone, if anyone knows of that. So that, I personally believe, is actually probably a genuine device that was used on the crashed ship that crashed at Roswell, and it's got a raised symbol, which turns out to be the same symbol as one of the crop circles over in here in the UK that happened, and it's certain part of that stone is magnetic and has a magnetic property. Now, magnets, as we know, I mean, VHS tapes, for example, used to use magnets. So we know magnets can store information. So what makes more sense? A nice packaged plastic device that will help navigate the stars, or from a race that doesn't care about making money, and they're not like that, use this device that will last forever. It's a stone. So, sorry, Sean, but the logic for an advanced race is not to use paper, and is not to use plastics, and is not to use disposable crap that we use now. It's to use what they need to use it for. So hopefully that makes sense. Keeping the Sabbath keeping the Sabbath holy, worshipping only one God. So the Sabbath obviously is the Sunday. So when you go back to the original texts where the Anunnaki came down and they had catalogued, there's 50 Anunnaki, they catalogued on the first day, forgive me if I get this around the wrong way, but insects, second day water, third day plants, fourth day animals, and so on. And on the seventh day they rested. So when the people that came to write the Bible, obviously their limited understanding of what's going on, said that it was God and they rested, and therefore everyone else has got to rest, which is probably a thing that the Anunnaki did. Once they rested on the seventh day, they probably kept that going, because we know they ended up with calendars. In fact, that's where we get our calendars from, if it wasn't for them. So the logic there is, yes, have a day off because they were working, and they were working on mines, etc. So, sorry, something in the background. But as for the one God, yes, that's where the powers that be, the ones that was changing the Bible, changed it from the Anunnaki, and they got rid of Enoch over time in different Bibles. So, they changed it to one God because they wanted everyone to believe in one God. So I just, unfortunate that they did that. Cash Only's wrote, bro, thanks so much for your time. You're more than welcome. Streams of Consciousness wrote, apart from killing and stealing, the others are trash. So that's going back to the Ten Commandments. Now, thou, if I remember correctly, thou shalt not covet the neighbour's wife, something like that. Are you thinking that's a good idea? I'm just going from memory. It's a long time since I read the actual Ten Commandments properly. Robbie, is the flood from a movie or something? No, I think it genuinely happened. There is evidence. I know the timescales are different, but even in other countries, as far away as India, they have wrote about the flooding or the deluge. So there was something that happened for sure, and it's not inconceivable that if it is one of these periodic glacial, where the world does that, then it's not inconceivable that. So apparently it went up to about 60 foot high. So there was some research done into what would happen if a certain amount of the ice shelf broke off of Antarctica, and even if it didn't sink or anything, even if it just broke off, then it would raise the waters by X amount high, which would obviously bring a lot of people underwater. So it's not inconceivable that it was a natural disaster. And it's probably happened more than once in our history, over and over. But obviously, people weren't around prior to that to make note of it. So, and it's probably going to happen again, I would imagine. Just looking at what happens when a tsunami happens, it's quite interesting that literally it does take out people, take out buildings and everything. So if something, and that's just a natural thing that happens. So if it could happen. So I don't think it's a movie. I think it probably did happen. There's enough written records of it to say that something happened back then. Big Chris has wrote, what if the Ark was holding just the DNA, not actual animals? Okay, so someone wrote about Ark earlier. I went on about the Ark of Covenant because he had a C as opposed to a K, whereas this chap, Big Chris, has wrote Ark with a K. So I'm guessing this one's the... hopefully I got the right one last time when I was waffling on. So the Ark, could it have held the DNA? I don't think so. Because what would have then happened, to be honest, I can't imagine that happening. Sorry, there's dogs in the background, but I can't imagine that happening because Noah didn't have the technology to bring back species on the Ark. It wasn't like a laboratory. Forgive me for the dog in the background. It wasn't a laboratory, so the Anunnaki would then have had to have come back down, whereas they wasn't originally planning on coming back down by the sounds of it after the flood. So for them to have foreseen that they would be coming back down to help with the DNA, I can't see that. So I think it was just, and I wouldn't say two of everything. I would have said he was told to put as much in as he can to help him and his wife with livestock so that they could carry on living after. That's what I think it is, but of course people change things over time. It's the old Chinese whispers. So yeah, the logic isn't there for the DNA, because that means Noah would have needed some damn good skills to resurrect animals from DNA, which we can't even do at this point, or possibly not. So Gabrielle has wrote, so are we a failed experiment? Absolutely not. No. We are exactly what we were supposed to be. So the Anunnaki made us. They had many failed attempts, many failed, and then I think after they created us, and they created us for one reason, to do the mining, the hard work. So we're not a failed experiment. We are a slave race originally, sadly. But I do think that they ended up messing around with the DNA to try and figure out whether or not they can get better things. So you end up with the half man, half bull, and half man, half horse. I think they probably did mess around. I mean, if they have the technology to create us, then I think, and we know that we've heard that our secret military are creating super soldiers, and they're trying to do that from the DNA of the Nephilim, that they're trying to find the giant skeletons, and that's why we can't see the giant skeletons in museums, because they don't want to see them. So apparently our military are trying to create super soldiers from DNA. So Enki, if he's smart, which obviously he is, He would have thought, well, okay, we've got these little humans mining, but what happens if we had someone stronger? And so I think they did try all these other creatures, and of course people carved them in stone, but unfortunately they didn't last because they weren't supposed to last, because they were sort of abominations as such. Robbie's wrote, how can you believe any of this? Listen to yourself. It's logic. That's exactly why I can believe it. Logic. I don't know if you know what logic is, but if something's logical, then you can go along with it. If something's illogical, yes, I know I sound like Spock, like the Bible's very illogical. It's got a lot of things that just doesn't make sense, so I can't go along with that. But something that's logical, and then there's the Hopi Indians. If you're saying, oh, well, there's no such thing as Nibiru, the Hopi Indians wrote about it. It's called Wormwood, it's called the Dark Star, it's the Dark Destroyer, the Blue Planet. So, there's evidence out there. So if you start looking at the evidence and the logic follows it, then seem to be, in my opinion, talking very correctly. And then Lummy's trying to back up the defence of the guy Robbie, that just said that I'm sounding stupid. May Bios wrote, correct what you say about the rib 300,000 years ago, then Adam and Eve 35,000 years ago. Yes, so well done, thank you. Yeah, it's exactly where I've gone with that, because the flood, if you do the timings, I've done a video on that, but if you do the timings from when first man was created, and again, going back to proof, the ancient texts say about 300,000 years ago, and modern science say 300,000 years ago. Both of them say South Africa, or Abzu in the case of the ancient texts. But so modern science is backing up the things that everyone's saying that I'm talking rubbish on. But yeah, the logic on the 300,000 years ago is Adam and Eve lived for give or take 1,000 years, and then their descendants. I think there's about 10 descendants after that, but all of them lived less than 1,000 years. So that's only 10,000 years approximately. Then the flood would have had to have come, because that would have been Noah's time. But that would have been 280 something odd thousand years ago, and of course the flood wasn't 280 odd thousand years ago. So it makes sense that there was another Adam and Eve, and I'll give you a little spoiler. I think the reason why they were wrote down as opposed to the first Adam and Eve, the second Adam and Eve, were because they were offspring of Enki and human women. So that's how my take on it. Lumley's trying to be a troll now, talking about Justin Bieber as a reptile. It's sad that we get these trolls, isn't it? The Queen has weird, garnly reptile man hands. Sheet Stains has said. Just scrolling down, and Amanda's thrown back to Sean. Flat Earth is not Earth, it's a ship. This is from Ray. It was the Garden of Eden, it was Shambhala, it was Atlantis. Flat Earth is not Earth, it is a ship. Okay, just like people ask me, I mean, I can go back to the ancient records, I can go back to different cultures talking about certain things, like, for example, the flood or the planet Nibiru, etc. Can you point me in any direction that says Earth is a ship? And obviously it's not going anywhere, it seems to be stationary. So a ship, I would have thought, would have been moving to somewhere. So that kind of, to me, the logic isn't there. That, and then you've got all the other planets that we can physically see with our eyes. They're not going anywhere else. So either. So are they ships? And if they're not ships, why can't we not be a ship? If they're not ships, why? You see, so I just throw logic in there, and then so. It's that, and then as soon as I realise it's illogical, then I move on. So Amanda's wrote, what if the Ark was actually a spaceship? I wouldn't have said it was a spaceship, because it the writing sort of suggests that he weathered the 40 odd days and then landed on Mount Ararat, or dried up on Mount Ararat. And there's actual proof in some respects from the book of the 12th Planet, where they talk about, obviously that's Sitchin's book, but he's obviously done this research, but the research shows that certain plants, etc., were grown around the time of the end of the flood, halfway up a mountain instead of lower levels. And the conclusion there is the reason why the livestock and everything else was halfway up a mountain is because the waters hadn't receded at that point, so they had to sort of settle halfway up a mountain until the waters finally receded. So that's a logical conclusion as to why these certain plants and crops and everything were grown halfway up a mountain at that time. Caladora Lovely, hi there. A real history has been cast aside. Who was the first group to initiate this deviance, do you think? It's a very good question, actually. I haven't really gave that much thought. Very good question. I wouldn't have said one particular group. Not until recent times. Obviously, you've got your groups like your Bilderbergs and your Illuminatis and whatever else. I would have probably suggested that would have been individuals who seek to power themselves over periods of times, and each time the next period comes along, for example, the Romans, and they realised that the Bible was saying things that they didn't want to say, then they would change it, and then King James would change his version, and so on. So I don't think it's one particular group that changed it. I think it's just loads of greedy people, which is quite sad. May Bios wrote, I like your voice, accent, mood in speech. Yeah, I get a bit passionate when sorry about that. I'll do my Sean Connery impression otherwise. Hello there. That's really bad. I can do it. But anyway, okay, enough of me waffling on there. You're not here to... That's not why you called, as they say. Sheet Stains has wrote, sorry about the uni bit of life. Uni of life bit. That's okay, no problems. I'm just scrolling a couple of people talking to each other. I'm just reading. Amanda's replying to a lot of people. Amanda knows her stuff. Lumley wrote, psychics laugh out loud. So that's going back to, that's the same chap that was trying to debunk me earlier. So yeah, that's when I mentioned that I get my research from over the 30 years I've spoken to various people, including psychics. Now, just to drop the mic again on Lumley, I'm sorry to make you look silly, but you do realise that Uri Geller is a psychic. You do realise that Uri Geller was employed by the CIA for 5 years as a psychic. Now, if he wasn't any good, they wouldn't have employed him. So that's a little known fact, but that's a fact. So psychics, in whatever whatever form they come in, are real. People can do these things. So there you go. So if he wasn't real, then sorry I dropped the mic. I know I'm being facetious here, but sometimes it gets to me. So Robbie's wrote, so explain to me how aliens control the world. So if they do, now there's a couple of trains of thought on how they control the world. So the first one is that they are came, so basically fallen angels, which is, forget the word angels, fallen Anunnaki, which basically is disowned Anunnaki, who were the ones that had relationships with human women. So forget the angel part, because people get confused with that. And there's enough evidence to prove that they were real in ancient texts, not floaty beings that spirits, because there was spirits as well written at the same, even in the same paragraph. But anyway, so there's one train of thought that the fallen angels eventually had to do with the Knights Templars, had to do with the Illuminati, being the enlightened ones that had the knowledge from the Anunnaki. So obviously the Anunnaki were smarter than us way back then, and had some technologies to be able to levitate stone and obviously space travel, etc. So one train of thought is that the Anunnaki, the fallen ones, the disowned ones that stayed here, they are pulling the strings at the highest level. So in other words, you get like the group of the family of the 15 families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and so on. They're pretty much the 15 families that run the planet, and they supposedly answer to an alien. Now, whether or not that alien is one of the fallen Anunnaki, whether it's a reptilian. Now, the logic leans me towards more the reptilians, only because they worship reptiles. I don't know if you've seen the Bilderberg groups and things like that, where they go along and they dress up and worship some sort of Satan, but it's like a snake or a lizard type thing. So if they are worshipping that, these are grown men, billionaires worshipping, wearing bloody robes and stuff. So they're doing it probably for a reason, and that reason probably is because someone is pulling the strings to get us to do how they want the planet to go. Light of an Angel. Can you give a rough and quick explanation of the Anunnaki, like who they were and what they do? So, okay, Anunnaki, I get told off for the skin colour, so I'm not going to mention that, because if it's not the right skin colour that someone wants them to be, then I get told off one way or another. So the Anunnaki, 8 to 10 foot tall, elongated heads. 12 of them were classed as gods. Those 12 were the princes. Then you've got the princess, which there's a sister. So you've got Anu, which was the dad. And then you had Enki, Enlil, and Ninshara. Yeah, I can't pronounce names very well. So they make up some of the 12 gods. And so those 12 gods were a race called the Elohim. And they live on a planet called Nibiru. And that Nibiru orbits our sun every 3,600 years. So for their lifespan, if they came to Earth, they would look like they lived for thousands and thousands of years compared to us. However, if we went to their planet, we would die within sort of an hour of living on their planet in relative terms. So when they came here, they needed gold. They needed to mine for gold. Now, I know we all think gold. It's very difficult to break people's conceptions of things, because as soon as I mention gold, they say, they want our gold. No, it wasn't our gold. We learnt gold from them. And that's where, the stories of Jason the Golden Fleece and things, it all comes from them wanting the gold, the powdered gold, to sprinkle in their atmosphere, because they had a problem with their atmosphere. They came here in rocket-type powered ships. They struggled to get through the atmosphere. They wrote it down, and it's been described as a firmament. Unfortunately, people then taken that firmament and said it's a solid object, and we're now trapped in a dome and snow globe and all sorts of stuff. But really, it was just they were struggling to get through the atmosphere. The logic shows that, as opposed to it being an impenetrable thing, because that means if it was impenetrable, they didn't come from outside. They would have been on Earth originally. So they came here. They had other Anunnakis here, but they were just called Anunnaki, or we call them Anunnakis, but they weren't the 12 gods. The 12 gods were the main people. So the other Anunnakis did some work trying to mine. They didn't like it. After a long period of time, they said, look, this is just killing us. Yes, they had technology, but they didn't have very good technology to mine for gold. Otherwise, they wouldn't be moaning. We still, we use machines and everything, I know, but, 200 years ago we would have been back-breaking work. So they are behind, the Anunnaki are behind us in technology in some ways. So anyway, cut a long story short, they come up with the idea of genetically modifying humans that were, genetically modifying the species that were here at the time. There's about 4 of them. I'll never remember the fourth one, but Erectus, Homo erectus, Florensis. Now my brain's gone on the other one. But anyway, so they managed to create a human who they got to do. They eventually took from the rib, created a female so that these can carry on breeding. So they've got now a little workforce. But that isn't the Adam and Eve that we know that had Cain, Seth, and Abel. That came later on. And that's who the Anunnaki are. And then once they got what they wanted, they did have some wars on Earth. Pyramid Wars is one name for them, which I'll be going into depth on my videos soon about. But that's pretty much who the Anunnaki are. And then once they got what they wanted, they left. Disco Infernos wrote, "I'm sat in my history class at the back again. No one passed me notes." Just scrolling down. Do you believe the world would end in 2012? Okay, so that's from Robbie. No, because I'd done some research. So no. So the 2012 is obviously to do with the Mayan calendar. Now, the logic there, I know I keep going on about logic, but the logic is, if you made a calendar, you're going to have to put an end date, because otherwise it will be a very, 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 very long calendar. So at what point do you stop putting a date down? That's the first thing. So, they could have put it down for today's day. They would have had to have ended the calendar at some point. But then you've got the descriptions of them saying that there's going to be a new see, some people read it as the end of the world and a new beginning, but it's not. It's basically them saying that it's going to have to be a new beginning, not in the way that we think. Obviously, we all thought, oh, it's the world's going to end, but I think it was more of an enlightenment thing. So by that time, our consciousness should have been raised, and it hasn't. It's been totally suppressed by we know who. So no, I didn't think the world was going to end. So I'm just scrolling on. Do you believe, Disco Inferno's wrote, do you believe in reincarnation? Yes, I do. Enough people have proved things that they shouldn't have known. Certainly kids. Enough of them. Just research yourself. There's enough kids out there that have described things. There was this young kid that was he kept saying he was an airplane pilot, and he went to he persuaded his family to go to a reunion, and he started naming all the people that was at the reunion. These people were like 90 years old. So he was a pilot that was shot down, but then reincarnated into obviously the young boy, and the young boy then remembered a lot of the stuff that they did, even the nicknames of the pilots. So it's pretty impressive if that's not reincarnation. So there's Dolores. Sorry, my internet seems to be cutting out. Forgive me if the internet's cut out. Dolores Cannon is a good place to start for people, for sure. She was one of the first people that I was following. From that point of view, from the past lives, etc. Fun West has wrote, explain the soul and does it continue? Soul is a light energy that joins with us when we're 3 to 4 months in the womb, connects to our pineal gland. I can go on about why it connects to but it connects to the pineal gland. It stays with us. It's like a hard drive. To be honest, it's like a hard drive. I don't know. I'm probably going to go too technical here, but there's RAM and ROM. So I'm probably going too technical, but basically it stores your memory, and when you die, it's still got your memory, it's still got all your feelings, it's still got you as what you was for that lifespan. But then it crosses over. It can cross over. Obviously, if it doesn't cross over, then it's sort of stuck on Earth. It should really cross over at some point again. So once it crosses over, that's when I believe that person that you are now gets moved along in the queue of all the people that's also been with that light being, and then that light being then makes an agreement again with the council of aliens to join with another unborn baby. They go through the life's what's probably going to happen to you or to the spirit if you join with this life. Do you agree? Yes. And they sort of give you a job in a way. And that's why you sort of have a contract, and they don't like it when you die, when you commit suicide. That's a big no-no. They hate that. That shouldn't happen. So you need to. That's why some people in near-death experiences get told, "No, you haven't done your job yet. Go back." So although you're not aware that you're doing a job, the entity that's connected with you is sort of not necessarily guiding you, but it's sort of making sure you're doing what the original plan was that person should be doing. Sorry, scrolling on. Maybo has wrote, how much does our thoughts, faith, materialize events, things, how prayers work? Good question. Fantastic question, I say. So yeah, I've done some videos on manifestation. So if you're a spirit, if you ask the spirit how they can drink in a pub, how they can play football, how they can ride a motorbike, it's to do with manifestation. So they actually manifest the things that they want on the other side, and the other side is literally here. It's the right in front of us. Obviously, they can travel to other planets, from what I understand. But if they're here and they're staying around here, they can manifest things. So, for example, if you listen to audio recordings, there was one, just throwing it out there. There was one that they did. Some ghost hunters went to a pub and they asked the question, and then they play the recording back. They don't hear it live, they play the recording back, and in the background there was a glass smashing, and of course they went round looking to see whether it was a glass that smashed for real at the time. Anyway, it wasn't, and then they asked, was that actually a glass smashing? And they said yeah. And then of course they asked, how can you have a glass, how can you hold a glass? And then basically comes back to manifestation. So that's one thing. So, and that goes with us with prayers. So a group manifestation, going back to Uri Geller, he's uses the group manifestation. You probably changed the word manifestation, but he uses the group consciousness to manipulate things, and it's a very, very powerful thing. So if we all tonight thought, instead of using the word pray, we all thought that the people that's trying to depopulate the planet should get pushed down the stairs, that would be a very good, worthwhile thing. And obviously people do the same with rain. They back in the day, they all used to pray for rain, and sometimes it worked. Now, obviously, people would say, well, that's a coincidence, but the group consciousness is actually a very powerful thing, as suggested by Uri Geller, who, again, if you just joined, you probably won't realise, but he was employed by the CIA for 5 years as a psychic, helping out on many things. Okay, so moving on. Now, normally I run out of time about now, but I'm actually at home, so I can spare a little bit more time if I haven't finished all the messages. Are you a Graham Hancock fan? Yes, I believe a lot of what he says. As with all the researchers, they've all got some excellent points. Some I don't agree with, and they probably wouldn't agree with my stuff. But yeah, no. Any researcher, you've got to give credit to for sticking their neck out and going along with what they believe. So well done to them for that. But yeah, Graham Hancock's a British guy, and I've not spoke to him personally, but he, most of his stuff I think is very, very good, very well researched. He's got some books out there if people are interested. Amanda's doing the fantastic job of replying to people. Adonis King has wrote, I believe we are half man, half gods. Okay, so if you're going along with the Adam and Eve from 300,000 years ago, then no. If you're going along with the Adam and Eve that Enki and the fallen angels all had relationships with the Adam and Eve that was from 300,000 years ago, their offsprings, then yes. So some of us, the bloodline, I think, was half alien or half god, if you want to call it that. And some of us are not. And that's where I think the blood types have changed. That's why I think we've got different coloured skins. I've done some videos that will be uploaded very soon on all of that, and I have to be careful what I say about skin colour. What a world. Mr. Inappropriate says, that dude says that, but people believe in the Bible, stories made to control people. So I'm guessing Mr. Inappropriate, I'm so far behind on the messages, as usual, is referring to one of the other people that says that what I'm talking is probably rubbish. But yes, you're right, more people believe in the Bible than probably believe in what I'm waffling on about. And the Bible, we all know, doesn't make sense, whereas what I'm saying, I hope, makes more sense than the Bible. Mr. Inappropriate wrote, things on this earth we can see that can't be explained, which is good proof that our true history is saying, thank you, the earth isn't flat, haha, Mr. Appropriate wrote. Mr. Appropriate wrote, the consistent overall shadow it produces in each and every lunar eclipse proves that the earth is not only round but spherical. Absolutely, utterly, beyond a shadow of a doubt, not flat. Amanda's wrote, we need to do another live so we can debate. I think people's trying to get me to do more lives every day now. My life's just going to be full of lives. I'm just scrolling on. Yeah, I'm just trying to, because there's so many messages. So Mr. Inappropriate's sort of pointing out some points about why the earth is round. Billy Moped has wrote, there could have been a pandemic that killed or removed our memories of distant past. Okay, so do you mean the reincarnation, or do you mean why we had such technologies and we could build things like the pyramids that we struggle to build now? I think, if you look at, I hate using the word logic, but if you look at the logic, there's handfuls of places that had the technology, Egypt, Mesopotamia or Iraq, etc. And obviously places where pyramids and Stonehenges and certain of those types of things. So only a handful of people would have ever been local enough in the big scheme of things, because obviously remember there wasn't 7 billion people on the planet at that point. So only a handful of people would have been around. And in those locations where this technology was, only a very small amount of those probably would have even understood what the technology was. And then even a smaller amount was allowed to know what the technology was. So if they didn't write that down or pass that down in verbal descriptions, then over 200 years, any information on how that was built would have probably long gone. So I think that's probably, I don't think that we had a pandemic. I just think that if you break it down into that sort of scenario, then, if I knew something and I told someone and they didn't write it down, then, in 200 years, no one would even remember. Just scrolling down. Mr. Inappropriate wrote, the Milky Way could be teeming with interstellar alien civilizations. We just don't know about it because they haven't paid us a visit in 10 million years, or they have, but that we're so thick that when we look up and see a UFO, we still believe in a one God that's got no proof of whatsoever, but yet we see UFOs and people's been abducted, and so, but we still say there's no aliens, which is really weird. But yeah, no, it could be teeming with life. From what I understand, it's there is lots of life out there. And Amanda's replying to that, because certain people are keeping it from us. Mr. Appropriates wrote, the Anunnaki maintained invisible surveillance over us as well as the control over how humanity develops. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It could be one of those scenarios where it could be the fallen angels, or I guess it could still be, yeah, I mean, you're right, it could still be the actual Anunnaki, not necessarily the fallen ones, that are still watching us. I mean, to be honest, I don't know the answer to who is, but I think someone is. Mr. Inappropriate wrote, the deluge immortalized in the Bible and many other ancient books. Yeah, that's why I say I think there was definitely some sort of flooding going on. And then H4 has wrote, it's all about reincarnation and the journey. Yes, I agree with that. Unfortunately, we're as I've mentioned many times before, we're containers according to the little greys. That's what they call us. And literally we are. We just contain that light energy that's continuous. So we're just a blip, an ant, as someone might suggest. 123 has sent a rose. Thank you. I will take that rose. Thankfully. Do you have a recommendation on the best version of the Book of Enoch to purchase and read? There's audio books. I mean, sometimes where I don't have the time, I try and listen to audio books of it in my car. So if you did want an audio book, there's some free versions on the internet. I think they're probably pirated, but stuck on YouTube. So you can go with that for a start if you want to listen to it. Other than that, just find one and buy it, really. I mean, I've read it a couple of times, and then I've listened to the audiobook descriptions of it, and sometimes for me, I'm not the world's greatest reader. Sometimes listening to someone else say it gives me the chance to formulate the how it all corresponds with things. Instead of just spending my time reading it, I can actually sit and digest it while someone's talking. That's just the way, for me, it works better for me sometimes than reading, because I have to reread things a few times to make it sink in. Do you believe the Anunnaki reincarnate too, or is this just a specific spirits for us? Calidor Lovely's wrote. Very good question. If you read the Book of Enoch, where Enoch talks about, he's standing with an angel, which isn't really an angel, it's just a military Anunnaki person, and they're looking at a dead body, and they see a spirit come out of that dead body. So we know from that alone that they are aware of spirits. So going to the reincarnation side of things, I think some pyramids were built so that they could, with the frequencies and everything else, they could stay in there for the night. And this is written some places. They stay in there in the night to contact the deceased. So I think they were certainly aware of the deceased. Now, whether or not they knew about reincarnation, I don't know, but I know from what I've just said that I think they definitely was aware of life carrying on after death, and that then followed on with the Egyptians, who went one further and tried to mummify things and stuff. But the Egyptians weren't Anunnaki, but I'll do videos on that down the line. Saying that, not all were Anunnaki. I think you had Tutankhamun's mum and dad and Tutankhamun, who all had elongated skulls, were probably more the lineage of the Adam and Eve down the line, which I will do videos on. I don't want to waste your time waffling on. Logs Tayers wrote, this is basically the premise to the second half of the new American Horror Story season. Or the American Horror Story season has copied what was written in the past. It doesn't have to be that way around. It doesn't have to be that I'm copying or we're copying the TV show. The TV shows normally copy our true history. I felt like there was truth to the episode, Logstays wrote. Yeah, they, as I say, X-Files is fantastic for trying to put out the information in there. I have, Adonis wrote, I have A blood type and have the CCR5 Delta 32 mutilation, so I'm immune to HIV AIDS. Okay, I'm only moving on, forgive me, because I've kind of gone over what I would like to have spent doing this. Shelby has wrote, we all just die. I can't see that. I really can't see that we die. We die when we cross over again, but when we die, I certainly believe that there's, 100% believe, because I spoke to my dad on a Ouija board and asked him questions just in my head. It was just me and my mum, and my mum obviously is not a mind reader, and it went to the correct answer. So for me, 100% there is spirits out there that are us after we die, but once they cross over, I think that's when we lose our, we just get pushed to the back of the queue in that spirit. Darlene Collins has wrote, just had a friend pass, can they be around me? So there seems to be some time frame before people can actually, so if they pass straight away, this is from what I understand, if they pass straight away, they can quickly, and I mean fairly quickly, within sort of 20 minutes, visit someone and somehow let them know. There's so many cases of people's, like, their phones rang just at the moment that the person's passed, and it comes up with a number of trying to remember what the number is. In the States, it comes up, your phone number comes up 0000000, I think it is, which is really weird and shouldn't happen. But so it's the phone, it's them letting them know. And then there's the dreams as well that people have the same day, the same night, that if someone's passing, suddenly they'll get a vision in their dreams that this person's, telling them, don't worry, it'll be okay, or whatever. So, but then once that's happened, there seems to be a sort of a cooling off period. I'm guessing it's where that spirit then either crosses over or sort of acclimatizes to where they are. It's not long, anywhere from sort of a week onwards, and then yes, so the way it kind of works is, while you remember them, they can stay around if you want them to. Obviously, if they choose to cross over, they will. But so, for example, they may not be with you right now. They may be somewhere else with someone else standing, right over someone else's shoulder, for example. But if you think of them, they can come here or come to you in an instant. So don't think they're not around because they're not around. They can come to you if you think of them. Now, the best time to ask them for proof is nighttime, because their energy, they're light being energy, they struggle with the sunlight. So that's why hauntings and all these things and clairvoyancies and everything else try and happen at night, because the sun, I'm guessing it's to do with the frequency of the sun, making it very hard for them to be able to manipulate things. So if you want them to sort of nudge something, be up late at night, very late at night, and it takes a lot of effort for them to move things. But if you ask them, and lights are probably the best thing, flicker the light, flicker the TV, something like that. Try not to ask them to turn on a computer or anything like that. But little things like that, they can, if they've got enough energy, manifestation to be able to do that, then they will. Don't be disheartened if they don't, because it's not an easy, it's not, otherwise everyone will be having their lights flickering all day long. So it's not an easy thing to happen. So don't be sad if it doesn't happen and you ask them to do it. And, for all you know, they may have even crossed over again. So there's, as I say, there's different planes of existence. So when you die, you're on astral plane, and then you can, once you're on that side, you can then move on back up to the next plane, and that's where, once they move over, you can't really contact them, and that's where clairvoyants turn around and say, sorry, they've passed over, or they get a message from a different person when they're trying to contact someone, and they say, sorry, that person's moved over or crossed over. So don't be too sad if you can't, they may have already crossed over, They may still be around, but if you do want to talk to them or get some sort of knowledge that they're around, that you're around, obviously you can go to very reputable clairvoyants, mediums. But if you want to try and get them to just communicate once, just to let them know that they know that everyone's all good, do it at night. Darlene Collins has sent a couple of roses. Oh, thank you. It's very nice of you. And Amanda's wrote exactly the same what I've just waffled on about. That they may not stay here long. They may move on themselves. Yeah, well done, Amanda. H4 says they definitely knew about reincarnation, afterlife. Oh, if you've got anything that sort of suggests that, I would love to if you can point me in that right direction, that'd be great. Mickey has wrote, I know I'm showing up late, but I just wanted to remind you to dehydrate. He's my guardian angel. I'm at home and I didn't have a drink with me, and so yes, I am going to make myself a cup of tea after. Normally I'm at work, which is why I'm running late. I'm just tidying up the house at the moment. Getting the candles in, to be honest. I've ordered candles just for when the fake electricity runs out, to do with the fake solar flares. Melisam has wrote, question: are these entities responsible for sleep paralysis? That's a very good question. I've never come across that. But that's not to say it's not. It's a good question. I can't answer that. That's a good question. I mean, obviously you've got the sleep paralysis with the aliens, where they deliberately put you under. But then you have real sleep paralysis, where you're not thinking of a little grey, you're just paralysed. Could that be the entity? Could be. Yes, good question. Very good question. Mickey's wrote, it's 7 a.m. here and I just took my boy to school. Well done. I wonder where you are. What we here? So look at 5 years. I'm guessing America. Look at the time zones. Caladora, lovely. Thank you. I always appreciate these lives. You're more than welcome. Okay, so I'm up to date. So I'll be back to work tomorrow, and I'll probably do another live just for you guys. But this will go on YouTube. So if you missed anything and want to hear me waffling on again, this will go on YouTube later on this evening, along with all my other live chats that are already there from other days, so you can listen to them. And thank you very much for joining me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Talk to everyone hopefully tomorrow, same time, noon UK time. Take care, everyone. Bye.